Today's a really special day. I've been really trying to figure out how to package some of these interviews and how I want to connect and relate with people. And I've been thinking a lot about stories and the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories in our heads, the stories that I tell as a professional, but also people's backgrounds and their stories. And today I am actually here with a very good friend, Michael Bliss, who is a longtime collaborator, a longtime friend, and a mentor in many ways. And I'd really like to welcome you here.
Well, thanks, Matt.
No, thank you. With that setup, I would really like to know, what is your story as a filmmaker? What did it look like when you first started making films?
Well, I started making films in high school, and we started off with skate videos because I was a big-time skater in high school, and I ended up taking a class with Miss Crozier, and it was a video production class, and I just loved it, and I ended up taking that class like 3 times, and I think you were only able to take it once. But she saw how much I loved making film, and the class really enjoyed the films that I was making, that she wanted to help me improve my skills. And so by the 3rd film, I started off with one called To Live Is To Die. And that one was pretty choppy. And so then when I took the next class, then I made a film called The Asylum. And that one, you know, kind of just so much improvement. But like with the first one, it was such a serious kind of story because this guy ended up accidentally killing his girlfriend. They were in a fight, and she ended up running outside and got ran over by a car. And so at that time in high school, there was a lot of people that were committing suicide, and so it was really in our heads about, you know, something serious. And so we ended up making a film about it. And then The Asylum, I was kind of just like this dark kid at that time. I had a lot going on in my head, and so the next one was called The Asylum, and it was pretty cool because on the way here I passed by the building that we shot at, and it's the flour mill lofts now, and it was an abandoned building, and we ended up in that. And so as you go into each door, you face your worst fears. And it's a film I want to remake, you know, and update it because it's just such a cool story that each person has to go through a door to face their fears. And we ended up getting arrested because we were in that abandoned building. We're running and hiding up there at the top, and the cops got us and took us to the Denver jail, and our parents had to pick us up. And so we got out of it, though, because our teacher was like, oh, they were just making a film for our class, so we were able to get out of it. And then from there, when I took the class the 3rd time, then I made The Underground. And that one, you know, just from each film, just I got better and better. And my teacher was so impressed that she took me to the Public Access Center at that time. And I was able to use their editing system. So it was kind of like the first time I got to do transitions. And so, you know, it just kept progressing. And then that one was based in the future, and mankind had to live in the underground because we've destroyed the earth. So each film kind of has a dark subject, but, you know, it's just kind of the way my brain works and where I was at that time. So that's where it all started.
I love that. I will say that when I think of you, I think of the word DIY. And that you really adopted that shoot with what you got and not wait for something to be offered and just really going for it. Can you tell me about that and your decision to pursue filmmaking that way and just how that has shown up in your life?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my filmmaking is basically just guerrilla-style filmmaking because, of course, you know, you were in CyberOne and you saw how I shoot, where I just come up with these ideas and I'm like, let's go shoot, Matt. And you don't even have really a clue of where this story's going. I would kind of tell you, like, I'm shooting some of this for B-roll, I'm shooting some of that. And you're like, how is he going to put this together?
Yeah, I remember, because I don't feel like I got a full outline or a full script. I don't think.
Yeah.
I feel like we approached it so guerrilla style, and we shot out of order.
Yeah.
Which is how a lot of films are shot. And I remember at one point just going home and being like, I have no idea how this is going to come together. And just to my surprise, when you showed it, when you had that first initial screening, I was really amazed and impressed, because I was like, whoa, how did he do it? And I've always thought of filmmaking as a magic trick.
Yeah.
And that we're like magicians with light and sound and dialogue and music. And we, can persuade an audience to believe in this world we've created. And I just was so thrilled at what you made. And you have such a distinct style. And I think that that's really hard to get. And I just want to inquire about that. Especially, I think, your collaboration with Tim Nickel.
Yeah.
You two seem to bring out this style that's very you.
Well, and it really, for me, it's, low budget filmmaking. So how can we make a film without a big cast? How can we make a film without a big budget? And how can we utilize the people that are a part of the film? So like with CyberOne, basically, I'm like, okay, Matt, you're playing, two of the characters in this. And so, when we shot up there at the ghost town, it was pretty cool because we didn't have two people, so you weren't sure how we were going to do that. And you would run and change clothing, and then we'd shoot that other part, and then I'd splice it in. And so with Tim Nickel, I have him play every part in the films. And it started out with Cinnamon at the 48-hour film project, because I didn't know if I could make a 48-hour film. And so I'm like, Tim, I don't want to get a bunch of people together and just let them down. So let's just go at this like with no expectations. And then, we ended up winning 3 awards for the 48-hour film project, and people were chanting Cinnamon. And that was like one of the best feelings ever, to know we had no expectations. But as we were walking into the next screening, everyone was like, Cinnamon, Cinnamon. And I'm like, we made something that people actually like.
Yeah, it really resonated. I remember the audience reaction, just the really loud laughs, and then some awards that came afterwards, and then just screening. And I was always impressed that the reaction would be the same at a different screening.
Yeah, and so, when it's been at other screenings, I always get so uncomfortable watching my films. And so, I turned to Tim, and he'd be laughing, and I'd be laughing. And so that's the cool thing when a comedy works, because we were laughing kind of because we were uncomfortable with it. But then when the audience is laughing with you, then it's like, oh, okay, this is funny. Because, Tim's dressed up as a girl, and, I got him out of his comfort zone to play that Cinnamon character. And so to get that reaction where, with a drama, you don't know what people are thinking because it's not funny. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, it's silent, and you could hear the crickets, and you're like, oh, is this even good? But, if your comedy works and you get that reaction when everyone's laughing, then you're like, yes, I made something that people like. And, we ended up getting that audience award at the 48-hour film project, but also at Short Circuit in Colorado Springs. And I feel like when you get the audience award, that is better than any other award.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really curious about what you just said about being uncomfortable watching your own films, because that still happens to you today.
Oh,
correct? Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
Oh, it's just, when you put something together and you put your heart and soul into it, and then, you're watching it with an audience, it's almost kind of like you want to please your audience because you love it so much. And to me, it's important that your audience connects with your films, because I know I've heard before, like, who cares what the audience thinks? It's your film. But it's important, if you're a creative artist, that people like your work. And so to me, it's that uncomfortable feeling of, do they like me?
Yeah. Right. Well, and it takes a lot of vulnerability to show something. And
Yeah.
I think that that's the real courageous part about being a creative, and being a creative that finishes.
Yes.
I've told you this before, that there are groups of people. One group is people who want to make a movie, very large group. Then the group gets smaller. It's the people that have started a movie. Then there's the group that has finished a movie.
Yep.
And then the smallest group is someone who has been able to show the movie, because a lot of films have died in the edit bay.
Yeah.
And they have been come together and they just don't come out. So I really commend you for being a filmmaker that starts and finishes. And I don't think people get enough props for being able to do that.
Yeah.
I think too that being able to show it shows courage. And there's this funny phenomenon of, when I watch something that I've made, I notice these little things and these imperfections that I didn't notice when I was watching it alone.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, because when you're watching it with people too, it feels like you're under a microscope. And so you're really kind of focusing in on the screen and kind of looking around. And so it's easier to notice those little details that you didn't see when you were editing it.
Yeah. And, you know, you have a relationship not only to making films, but showcasing films. And you've long have ran a film festival, but have also created and participated in other ones.
Yeah.
What is it about film festivals that keeps calling you back?
Community. Yeah, I mean, really bringing people together, and it's tough because, as you know, because you've done a film festival, getting those people together, because now with streaming and being at home, it's so much easier to watch things from home. So to have people come and enjoy their films on the big screen, I think it just makes a big difference. And then when, you know, people really enjoy themselves and say they had a really good time, and you get those good reviews too, then that, you know, that makes a difference too. Because you were at our anniversary, which one was that? The 20th anniversary, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah, at the Alamo Draft House, and it was like their first festival at the Alamo Draft House on Colfax, and we ended up showcasing Patrick Sheridan, who died shortly after. And Patrick Sheridan came up to me after his showcase of films and just said, "You made my dream a reality." He's like, "I always wanted to see my film in a multiplex theater." And so that right there, like knowing that I made someone's dream come true. And so that is kind of why now, you know, I have the Patrick Sheridan Unity Award. And then, you know, it's a lot of work to put on a festival, as you know. And so, you know, it's like, why am I doing this? And then you think of that reasoning of, this is why I'm doing it.
Yeah, I have always loved the aspect of curating and figuring out what films pair well with which ones, what sketches go well, and that is a skill in and of itself.
Yeah.
So we showed CyberOne a couple different places. One of them was at the Peak Film Forum, and then the other one, if you can remind me, where I believe was at the Colorado Christian Film Festival.
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah. So I was so excited to be able to see CyberOne in such a big group, and it just had such an energy, and you did such a good job promoting and bringing people out. And I think what I appreciate about your film festivals, it's really about spotlighting the creatives.
Yeah.
I would love to hear about what inspired that film festival and just putting that event together.
Well, BlissFest is about creating unity in the community to bring love, peace, harmony, and bliss to a festival about creativity and individuality. And so that's kind of the key behind it. Is I just want to spotlight, you know, filmmakers and their art. And so this year we're at an independent venue called Gnarly's, and that's in Golden, Colorado. My Colorado accent.
Coloradans.
Golden Colorado, that is. And, it's kind of cool to be in an independent theater with independent filmmakers. And so I'm really excited about that. And we're going to be showcasing all Colorado filmmakers this year and not going international. So it's all about that kind of independence that, a lot of us are feeling like it's getting taken away from us.
Yeah, the tech companies have really got a stronghold on media distribution. And I think that's what I like about festivals and what I like about independent media is that there's almost like a sanctuary that movie theaters are this space where people share things together. And I recently went to the Aspen Short Fest.
Yeah.
And it was so cool to be in a space and really taking in, there were short films anywhere from a minute. I think the longest one was maybe 35, 40. But really taking in art and sitting there and not scrolling and not having control over it and just entrusting a film festival with what they've selected.
Yeah, and as you were talking about seeing CyberOne with an audience, that was just because when we first screened it was at my house just with my family and a couple other friends, and so it's much different when you're at a theater and you're actually watching it with people. And then it was pretty cool because then I got some messages in my inbox, and one of them was like, CyberOne is your best film so far. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so cool. And then another filmmaker that does some big budget films, like he went up and was actually talking about it and said, look what you can do with not a high quality camera, because I used my cell phone for that one. And he's like, the cinematography was amazing in that, and I just used my iPhone in 4K. And I think that's kind of, some people think, oh, I need a red camera. Well, no, use what you can. And even if it is an iPhone, but it's about the story, it's about your eye, if you're directing it, or you get a director of cinematography, that's really good too. But for me, I love photography. So, doing it in fall when the leaves were all turned just gave it that extra color too.
Yeah, and I remember we were starting to cut it close to winter.
Yeah.
Winter was right around the corner, and I was like, Michael, I don't know if we're going to make it in time. And you're just like, trust the process.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious about what inspired the story of CyberOne and how you first started to let these ideas generate, and that story, the story of CyberOne.
Looking in the mirror. I think I just sent you something out of my journal from, how many years? My son's like 23 now, 24. And so it was about 24 years ago when he was born, when I was writing some things in the journal, just talking about like looking in the mirror and saying, who am I? And then I mentioned I wanted to do some kind of film kind of talking about that. And then 24 years later, like I didn't even remember that was in my journal. And I just still would look in the mirror and say, who am I? And it really ties into the ego of how do we let our ego go? And so that's kind of you being the main character, looking at yourself in the mirror at the other side. Who is that person on the other side? And so, I don't know if everybody kind of gets that, but probably at the end, which I don't want to give away, but at the end, it kind of makes more sense. So it's kind of that journey we go through in life of who am I and where do I go? And, ended up in a ghost town and kind of doing some old school, like with payphones, it just kind of brought back kind of our past too, like answering the phone to a payphone, one scene being in an arcade. And I could really see this film like being something bigger as like a feature film too, because there's like so much we weren't able to shoot because time, budget, and all that. So I think it's a good outline of something that can be bigger too.
Yeah. And I don't know if you noticed this when we were filming it, but I really needed that creative project at that time. So I'm so grateful that you asked me to be in your film, because I have always led and have always been kind of in control of my own films, speaking of ego. And the process of acting and being in this universe you created was a real practice in letting go of how I imagine things and how I would shoot things. And, you know, I think the ego serves some important pieces of separating us from the fabric of the universe, right? But sometimes the ego can really get in the way. And I think ego has most affected me when it gets in the way of my friendships, or when I'm really defensive and I'm wrapped up in who I'm supposed to be. That story of who I'm supposed to be isn't matching the reality. And I think over time I've gotten better at being able to let go of who I think I should be, let go of who I think should be in my life, or how things are running.
Well, and it is hard because, I mean, we are kind of like the masters of our own universe in our minds. You know, and it's hard to get out of that and letting go and letting it flow. And you know, filmmaking and being a director, you know, you are the creator, and in a way you're like playing God in a sense, because it's your story, it's your idea. And so I think egos can really get in the way. So that's why I really kind of ask God into my art. And if you look at a lot of my art, like a lot of my photography and a mix of my films too, like it really ties into my spirituality. And, you know, because we did Lazarus 2020, and then Christ 2024, and then I did Dark 26. So, you know, and that is just kind of even Dark 2026, or no, it's Lazarus 2020, Christ 2022, and Dark 24. And with Dark 24, like that just came through in a dream. And once again, like there's a part where there's pure darkness, and I'm looking in the mirror in pure darkness, you know, looking for the light.
Yeah. I love that your films always feel like they're playing with identity, with this darkness, with trying to get through something. And it was so much fun to be in this retro world that you created with CyberOne, the little tape recorder, the payphone, and then for me to play a detective. I think I've always been working on projects where I'm playing a loose version of myself. So to really step into something that felt like more of an like me extending my skills more, really helped a lot.
Well, and also CyberOne is kind of that alter reality of yourself. So it's like you get to play someone you're not in this reality, but then it's fun to play it in that reality. So you know, you get to be kind of this detective kind of character as CyberOne in this alternate universe where, and we just had fun with it, you know, like finding the arcade, and that arcade is closed now, so it's like a part of history that it's no longer there. And it was just from walking around my neighborhood, all of a sudden there was this arcade because I was trying to figure out that scene, and I like, oh geez, we don't have to go very far for this scene. And we had so much fun shooting that scene.
Yeah, that was so awesome.
Like there hasn't been, you know, too often that I'm unable to control my laughter. Like we couldn't stop laughing.
I love a good uncontrollable laugh where it just doesn't stop. It's like, to me, that's probably one of my favorite things in life.
Yes.
Yeah, I think too that I'm really just just like in such gratitude for you to show up as you are, and just having that creative edge of being able to make things without waiting for the perfect moment. I'm wondering, are there any like stories in your head that you've had to like not listen to? Are there any like beliefs or things that have kind of gotten in the way of your filmmaking journey?
Yes. And so I have a film called Table 21, which is a feature. And I wrote it back in my 20s, where now that I'm in my 50s, I'm a complete different person. And I go back to that and I read the script and I'm like, my beliefs have totally changed since I wrote this. And so it's like, geez, now I have to like rewrite it change the characters and change kind of the whole story, because it's more of like a grindhouse film that's just got a lot of like parts in it that I'm like, I can't do that now. And I don't even want to talk about it because it's a, you know, like I was really inspired at the time because it was when Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez really got their big breaks, you know, with Reservoir Dogs and then From Dusk Till Dawn, when them two collaborated together. So that was kind of like my inspiration from that. Mm-hmm. And so now that, you know, I'm kind of on this different journey, it's like, wow, I wrote that. And I remember because I let someone read the script at one point, and that person was an older lady, and I thought it was like the best script, like gonna be, you know, I'm gonna be the next Robert Rodriguez, the next Quentin Tarantino. And she read the script and she's like, Mike, that script is really bad. but I think because like she wasn't expecting like all that language, all that, you know, sex that was in it, and like, oh, but you know, at that time, like that was kind of like the norm, which, you know, still is with a lot of films, but I changed over time. Yeah. And so now, you know, it's even kind of tough looking back at some of my other films like Zombie Fest because, you know, I'm even different. That's from it premiered in 2009, and that's my first feature. And so I kind of recut it for 2026, and I put it. I cut the feature into a short, so it'd make it into Colorado Short Circuit, and I think their limit is 20 minutes. So my feature started off at like 70 minutes, and so then I cut it down to 20, and it was hard to get it. Like I was like at 30, and I was like, Ralph, can I submit it at 30? He's like, oh no, you cannot submit this at 30. I don't even want you to submit it at 20. The shorter the better. I'm like, how do I make a feature into 10 minutes, you know? So I got it right at 20. But you know, going back and looking at that, I've changed so much since 2009 too.
Yeah. Well, there's something you said earlier too about the audience and the role of the producer director to the audience, and I'm of the belief that it is our job to actually protect the audience, and that it's important to make things that are good on behalf of them. And that's why people give us their time, and why they give us their energy, and why they give us their money, is because they're like, oh, I trust you that you're not going to waste my time. And even now, when I look back at my really late night pilot, I'm like, man, this could have been shorter. Yeah. This could have been written tighter, not in like a self-deprecating way, but just in a improving as a creative and just the quality. And yeah, it's funny how things move, and you can look at them and say like, this could have been done better. Yeah.
Well, and even thinking of The Asylum, because then when I was in Austin in the late 1990s, I was able to use their editing bays, and so I added some new footage into The Asylum, and I felt like I made that film better. But then through the years, like I would constantly go back and look at that film, and then I'd try to add more to it. And oh my gosh, like, you know, there's a certain time when you have to say, that's it, it's done, like, you know, because then I look back at what I added later on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this part is terrible. What was I thinking at that time?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's a sign of growth to be able to look back and be like, what was I thinking, you know?
Yeah.
I'm curious about the filmmaking process and what part of it you like the most. Is it the filming? Is it the writing? Is it the editing? Is it the finished product? Like, where are you the most happiest as a director?
I love kind of the editing process, but then getting to that finish line. Because like the editing part, when it's that puzzle in the beginning with all the clips and everything, trying to figure out where certain parts go, that's the fun part, because you're putting the puzzle together. And then when you're getting closer to those last pieces, then it's like, I'm almost done with this puzzle. And so then when you finally get that, last puzzle piece in, you're like, I did it. I made this mess of a puzzle into a, hopefully, a beautiful piece of art.
Yeah. Well, thinking about that, it's a self-created puzzle.
Yeah.
With these self-imposed deadlines. It's like kind of a crazy way to live. I think for me, I love the early imagination of it, because everything is possible, and I can see the film in my head. I can see it. I can hear the music. And then I think once we're on set, I'm like, oh God, this is a lot of hard work. Are we going to make it? And then I go through like a dark night of the soul of like, is this even going to come together? Is it? And then in the early editing, it's like, God, this is so, so much work. It's so laborious. And then, yeah, I think once the puzzle pieces start coming together and the feeling is there, I get excited again.
Yeah.
And then I'm most happy when it's complete and I can like show people like, here's the puzzle.
Yep.
So it's funny, like I can imagine a graph of like really happy, not happy, really struggling, and then whoop, like there at the end.
Well, I feel like we can lose a lot of time also in the editing process, because when I did a feature film, I feel like I kind of lost a part of my life at that time, because I was so super focused on getting this film done that, I with family, I was like, no, I got to get back to the editing. I got to get this done. And the time that is lost with especially family, because I have kids, I go back in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, I missed a lot of time with my kids. And I know like a lot of, bigger filmmakers, like divorce, like happens because they're so focused on their films that that's all they think about. And you hear about it all the time in Hollywood. And so now, what I do is I try to balance. Like balance is a key word. How do you balance your life, your family, and then being an independent filmmaker, we have to work to. So a lot of times the money I make at work goes into the films, but I try to keep it at a minimal budget that I'm able to make these films. Because I know we're talking about other filmmakers that don't finish their projects or don't ever even get started. I get a lot of people like texting me or calling me and saying, oh, I have a great idea. I have the script. Will you be involved? Will you help me shoot it? But they want me to do all the hard work. They want to sit back and not pay.
Yeah.
And so they still, like, these same people haven't even started on their projects because they get stuck right there. So they think if they get someone else that will kind of hold their hand and do it, that it'll get done. But no.
It is hard work no matter which way you cut it. And what's funny is I've gotten so good at being able to picture how much something takes that when someone's telling me their idea, I'm like doing the math in my head and thinking of the production days and the like amount of work.
Oh,
and
yeah.
if it's too much, I'm like, I'm out. I can't do that.
Yeah. And even with like Hush Little Baby, because that one was a bigger film where we had, I don't know, like 80 extras, and a lot of them were kids. And so kids on set are kind of like one of the toughest things to do because they see what's on the screen. They don't have any idea of how long it takes to get that part on the screen. And so we're getting ready to shoot, and we were at a historic Elitch Theater in the Carousel, had all the extras, we're ready to start shooting, and then the lead the main actress, calls and says, "I'm sick, I can't come." And so we're like, we could never get these kids to come back. We could never like have this again. And so we just asked one of the women there, which was Gigi Youngblood, and we said, do you want to move up into the lead role? And she's never really been, in a lead role. And she, after we finished, she said this was like such a great experience that she started working in other films and getting other roles. And then she called me back and she's like, I'm not doing it anymore. I'll only work with you.
That's quite the praise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have been telling people lately that if they're feeling really stuck in a rut and life is just feeling monotonous and they need to break it up, finding like an independent local film is such a great way to really just shake things up and just get connected. And I know that you and I have a pretty long-standing relationship with Community.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know what that looks like for Community to be something that helps produce a film.
Yeah, and that's kind of how the whole Hush Little Baby film got started, and that was at Denver Open Media, and they wanted to actually make a film, but no one was kind of stepping up to get a group together to make a film, which is a big part of Community and media. So I told Jesse Lockwood about the script and showed him the script, and he said, yeah, let's do it. And so he stepped up to produce it. And then we worked with people that never shot a film before and just would come on set and, be grips or be extras or just help out with whatever. And then we got a really good director of photography who was David Quakenbush. And then he came on. And so building that community, it ends up feeling like family, when you're all together. And then when you're kind of on that last day and it's a wrap, all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's done. And so then your family is kind of like, okay, we'll see you later. And so I feel like, when you're making films, you build family. And that's what it does feel like. I mean, even if it's a small film like what we did with CyberOne, like that bond of making it, like you get to know people and their lives and it's just building those relationships. And then when you make your next films, people that do want to work with you, like Gigi, that was such a compliment that she said that I would work with you again. And so, that's kind of the biggest compliment, because you hear all the time where people be like, I'm never working with that person again.
Yeah. I found that when making movies or making media in Community, it's so important that the personal aspect is really intact. And that you're really being conscientious of how you treat people on set and how you maintain that relationship. Because sometimes it's not the biggest paying job. Sometimes it's, free or even putting your own money in. Which means it's really important on set to keep it cool, be thoughtful, and not lose your temper. And when I first started making things, I would get a bit overwhelmed. And I remember snapping at people kind of early and really having to walk that back and learning quickly to not do that. And that staying cool on set is so important because especially when you're leading, people are looking to you to set the tone. And if the tone is one that's like stressed out or being rude or inconsiderate, that ends up permeating in other places. And, I do want to give a shout out. You mentioned Jesse Lockwood, and he is a great producer. And without him, really Late Night the pilot wouldn't have happened. And I just really, hearing you say his name, I wanted to express that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's really the reason why Hush Little Baby was born, because I had that script for years and I would try to make it, and I worked with different people, and then that was one that I had a really hard time of finishing because it was a bigger film than what I'm used to, because I like keeping things small and intimate and not a big cast and not a big crew. And so with that one, we had a bigger cast, a bigger crew. And so that was kind of nerve-wracking for me because, You know, it's easier when it's just you and I'm directing you, but when you have everybody around you kind of watching you, like you're saying, like keeping that cool, keeping, you know, a good energy. I mean, that's key on set too, because if you're upset and throwing things around, that energy is going to go to the entire cast and crew, and most likely that'll end up in your film, unless, you know, by the magic of filmmaking and editing, you know, you don't get that in the film. But you know, that's kind of what I see. Like, you know, it's a tough process, really, when it's a bigger cast and crew.
It is a tough process. I remember with the really late night pilot, that was the biggest crew I've had on my own personal project. And yeah, it's like 3 camera people, a sound person, 4 actors. I'm acting and directing.
Yeah.
I really chose the double black diamond skiing mountain of filmmaking, of trying to do the like writer, director, actor thing. And I'm proud of what I made. But I do remember this one time on set where it was a very big shoot and people went to lunch, they came back, and I was just frazzled. And then we were down a camera person, and we did a whole take, and I realized one of the cameras on a tripod got knocked to the side.
Oh.
And I just had this overwhelming sense of embarrassment.
Yeah.
And I just was like, man, you don't know what you're doing. People are laughing at you. You're like a joke to them. You should just send everyone home. And I could feel it in my body starting to like boil. And I just was like, it was like I had 2 roads that I could choose between. I was like, we can either freak out and send everyone home, or I could laugh at myself. And I just started cracking jokes and being like light and funny. And then we ended up finishing out the day. The scene was trash. We threw it away. I had to reshoot it. But I was so proud afterwards that I made the right choice, which was to follow the road of lightness, the road of laughter, and not taking myself so seriously, instead of the road of a hurt ego and being defensive, I think is what that would be.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, such a big part of my own sobriety has been a part of just not taking myself seriously, take the work seriously, take the art seriously. But really, at the end of the day, it's like easier to laugh at oneself than to be like way dramatic, you know?
Well, and as you know, with CyberOne, I was learning that gimbal, and oh my gosh, all of a sudden it would just like, and like just churn, you know, with a big cast and a crew. Like, yeah, it was kind of embarrassing, but it was with you, you know? So it's like, okay, let's do that scene again.
Right. No, I know what it's like, because I've used all kinds of phone gimbals, and you'll just be there, and then it's just like, especially I think when they made those, they didn't know phones would get so big. You know?
So yeah, you know, it's having that confidence even when you make mistakes. And I feel like I'm a perfectionist, and so I've been really working on, it's okay to make mistakes, but it's how you react to those mistakes.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning, like, we all make mistakes. We're not perfect.
Yeah.
And perfectionism is serious. Like in my job, because if I do live streams all the time, and I want them to be perfect, and they're almost never perfect. So, you know, when I'm done with them, I recut them, because I'm like, I want to look like perfect. So I've really been kind of letting go, like kind of that whole idea of letting go and letting it flow. You know, with live streams, you just gotta let that go and let it flow, and there's nothing you could do while you're live.
Yeah. I would say that, perfection is a fool's errand even. And if you are dead set on perfection, then you're never gonna finish. And I think that I've grown so much as a creative, as being able to put things out and show it and learn and grow from it. I've put things out that I have been embarrassed by, and I've like sat there and I'm like, it's almost over, just do it. And then like, it's like, it's fine. It's like, that wasn't my vision, but I made it, and I'd like to share that.
Well, even with Old School Rocks right now, because it's a rockumentary, and there's a lot of imperfections in this film, and the thing is, like, the camera will go in and out of focus and stuff, but I'm like, this is like a documentary. Like, so, like, I'm watching these documentaries like on Netflix and stuff, and like I see they didn't clean off the lens. And then I see the focus, going in and out. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is okay, because like it's supposed to kind of feel real. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I just kind of let that go of like, and then there was another part where I didn't want to let it go because it needed to be in focus. So I had to be creative with that. And I found like this cool filter to put over it to make it look like it wasn't out of focus. But then it has this cool old style rock video look to it. And I'm like, oh, this actually improved the scene here. And then I ended up using it for a background for the green screen too, because those mistakes when you can't reshoot, but then you have to be creative to figure out how to fix them too.
Yeah. What's funny is I just saw my new favorite show. It's called Common Side Effects. It's an animated show on HBO. And what's interesting is, even though it's animated, they include imperfections on it. Like a scene will be shot from the side of a car, and a piece of mud will look like it landed on the camera lens. So it's funny that it's animated, and that's like a part of film language, which is sometimes like a little mud will get on a lens, or something's like out of focus, or just like these little like fragments or imperfections. And yeah, I've like learned to embrace them, because sometimes there are those happy accidents too that come from filmmaking, and it's like part of that exploration.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened with this. And then as you were talking about that, I was thinking of like The Walking Dead, because you're in the scene with them, and then all of a sudden, like, they add blood that hits the lens, and I'm just like, and they do that through the series, and I'm like, I don't know if I actually like that, because I feel like I'm in the scene, but then when they make it hit the lens, then I feel like, oh, I'm just observing this through the camera. So it kind of felt like kind of out of place, like that didn't kind of sit with me right, because I'm like, it just blood on the lens. And I think they, like different shows do that a lot, where it does work a lot, but other times I'm just like, that just, it takes you out of being in kind of that scene. Because like sometimes you feel like a fly on the wall, and then all of a sudden there's blood on the lens.
Yeah, right. So are you feeling connected right now to creativity? Are there any stories that you're working on that you're willing to share, or are you on a break? Like, where are you right now as a creative?
Well, of course, just finishing up Old School Rocks. Like, I'm excited for the premiere of that. But creatively, like, I'm going back to my script Troll. Like, I'm kind of like getting excited to get that. I just read it again, and I'm like, this is a really cool story. And I also want to work on kind of like cheesy monster movies. Like I going back to Frankenstein and the Creature from the Black Lagoon and Dracula, and kind of that universe where I want to make like just cheesy monster films that are fun. Like, I just want to go and do some fun things where, we don't need a big budget, where it's just, fun, where we could laugh at it. So that's kind of some of the ideas I've been working on lately of, I was thinking of kind of like, instead of the Creature from the Black Lagoon, it's like a creature that is like this rock creature that all of a sudden stands up, and he just comes out like from the rock, and just kind of creating my own creature universe.
That's awesome. I love that. So if people wanted to see some of these films that we're talking about, what's the best way to kind of look you up or see the creations that you've made?
So the easiest way to find me is on YouTube under Michael Bliss 333. Just type that in and you'll find me.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I'm really just honored to be your friend and your collaborator and be in a Michael Bliss film. So thank you so much for sharing your talents with me, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. This is great.
Yeah.
We did it.
We did it.
We did it. Cut.